Yeah, gotta aim for the top like, hold up. Yeah, I can never doubt myself, I know better. All of you critics be acting like you know better. Blowing the smoke, but I know when the dust settles that I'm in my element. It's evident that there's levels to the game.
So what's going on, people? Welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. And today I'm sitting down with Jonathon. Jonathon, really happy that you reached out on LinkedIn. Always love making some new connections and things. And, happy that we were able to connect and discuss some things. And, so I'm happy that you're here on the show. Welcome to the Athletes to Athletes podcast, man. We're glad you can come on.
Most definitely, man. Ryan, glad to be here with you, man. Glad to just hang out and see where the conversation goes. So glad to be here.
Yeah. So as I told you, let's start now. 5 questions. So first question I have for you is, who's somebody you looked up to as a young athlete when you were coming up?
When I was coming up, man, if I rewinded back that far, there were so many. I was just so immersed with college sports. So college football, college sports as a whole. But one person that stands out, even though I didn't really play football, Maurice Claret. Just how dominant he was as an athlete, and that whole Ohio State was just running it up. So I would definitely say him at like around that high school time frame. But yeah, Maurice Claret, a beast, a beast.
Yeah. Um, when you were coming up, were were sports the end goal for you, or did you have something else that was on the agenda? And what did you want to be?
Yeah. So initially coming up, sports was the end goal, and this was like right around like that high school time frame, because I was at Wheeler High School, and they were the number one ranked basketball high school program in the country at that time. I didn't play varsity though, Ryan. So, but it was just the fact of seeing the guys who came the years and the years before me. Then it just gave me an expectation of what could be possible. But later down the road, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more. But later down the road, I then began to get a more realistic picture. But basketball is where I was putting my eggs in the basket. That's for sure.
As a professional, as an entrepreneur, what was the first goal on your list that you were able to check off?
The first goal for me was, man, just trying to figure out how I can get into like schools and start speaking. Because it's one thing, for people to talk about entrepreneurship and people talk about business, and they always talk about the money, but they don't talk about the process of it all. So it was like, what can I do? How can I find a way to get into these schools? How can I find a way to be able to share a message? It wasn't even really the focus of speaking, but it's just like, I have this book. Somebody please take me up on this book. Like, where can I get this in? So that was the biggest goal for me, is just being able to get into a school and then being able just to share a message just around my book at that time.
Mhm. When you were in college, what was what was the end goal once you became older, right? Obviously, when we're little, we're watching professional athletes. We're like, oh, I can remember the "Be Like Mike" commercials, trying to be like Michael
Mhm.
Jordan. But as you get older, things become a lot more realistic. What was the goals when the future was a lot more near?
For sure. So as the future became more near and my knees started to hurt a little bit more, and I started to realize I didn't have stamina like I once did. It was just, man, just getting a job. And at that point, like around the my later college years, it was okay. Now I'm going to counsel. So I was thinking that I was going to be a therapist, but I later learned that you need more than a bachelor's degree to be a therapist. But that was the goal for me, to be able to help people in that way. And as that basketball window started shrinking, then my eyes started to become a little bit more open to, okay, well, how can I be a therapist? How can I help people? And that was the focus for me.
What was the first thought that popped into your head when your book was finished?
It's finally done. Oh my goodness, Ryan, when I tell you, man, writing a book, especially the first one, it's like, oh my good, like it seemed so great after being done, but it's stressful, man. So it was like, oh my goodness, I'm done with it. But then the thought that came after that is, but now I have to tell people about the book because they won't ever know if I don't tell anybody. but it was just the relief of it being done. I'm like, sigh. Okay, I
Hmm.
can take a breath now.
Yeah. So let's dig in a little bit more, and let's backtrack. And you talked about how basketball was such a big part of your life, but why sports in general? Why did you gravitate towards the sports community, right? Why wasn't it more a little bit over here, but why was it sports, and why did basketball have such a hold on you?
Well, I mean, I definitely want to thank my parents because they introduced us to a lot of things. Right, we're a part of summer reading programs. In addition to that, then there was also the opportunity for sports. So the reason why sports was so big for me, I had an older brother. Whatever he did, that's what I did. He played baseball, I played t-ball. He was playing basketball, then I tried to play basketball. Right, so that was a big piece for me. And then as I began to grow a little bit taller, it helped me be comfortable in who I was. So that identity piece that I never actually thought about until now. But as I'm growing taller and being 6'2", and being above 6 foot, like in, right around that middle school time, I'm looking around and some of my other friends are around that same height. So I'm not looked at like a freak, or I'm not looked at as like an Amazon or whatever, but it was that community that welcomed me in just based on my height and based on my stature. So that was a big piece of why I took the sports route. But even further than that, I mean, it was fun, right? The just natural competition and being able to build friends and being able to build relationships through the vehicle of basketball made it easier, for me just to lean that way versus reading a book by myself, which is great, very informative, but at the same time, it wasn't as fun, as engaging as sports could be in that way.
Hmm. So as you're growing up, you're an athlete, you're playing sports and things like that. The college goal starts to come into play. How did you start to put your foot forward to make it to college, and what type of things were you looking at in the school that you eventually wanted to attend? Everybody has boxes they want to check, but it's tough to get all those boxes. It's really
Yeah.
tough to get every single one of them. What boxes were you trying to check as a high school athlete and as a high school student so that you would get on to that next level of academics?
For sure. So the boxes that I was trying to check that never got checked. I wanted to go to a Division I school. The UNCs, the Notre Dames, the NC States, and the Dukes. All these places that I would see on TV every weekend, every week. These were the institutions I wanted to go to. But as I started getting to my later years in high school, I started to fall off more and more academically. I started to become removed and disengaged. And at that point, it just got to a point to where I just was trying to graduate. Ryan, I was just trying to get out of there, man. It was a struggle. My senior year, high school, because I faced some adversity. But even outside of that, then the piece for me came to where, okay, I just want to graduate. And then after that, I knew I had to go to college because my dad, he's an attorney, and my mother, she's an accountant. So it was understood that that was the next route.
Hmm.
My grades were so terrible that I didn't get the opportunity to get accepted to Division I institutions, and the opportunity that I had was going to a junior college. So attended Richland Junior College out here in Dallas, and by way of doing that, grades weren't good enough to be able to play on a team because I wasn't even eligible for the most part, and I wasn't taking enough hours. But then what ended up happening was I found the coach, met the coach, and then he was like, "Well, we don't have spots on the team, but you can be like our team manager." So that was like the entry point for me into college, and really just still having that passion for the sport, but also just realizing that in order for me to get the benefit of playing for the team and just being around the team, there were also some requirements that were expected of me. So I had to take, the allotted number of hours, and I had to begin to be eligible and these things. But I thank the game for that because if that wasn't there, I really probably wouldn't have stayed around school much. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the grades weren't on point and that, both your parents were in high level academic jobs, right? Accountant, attorney. It's expected for you to go on to the next level academics.
Hmm.
And I know, I mean, I had my troubles academically when I made it to college as well. So, I remember the conversations that I had with my parents. What were the conversations like for you when things start slipping academically with your parents that helped you refocus and helped you get back to at least what your goals were and what you wanted to accomplish?
So my mom, who I was staying with at the time, she was like, "Son," because it got to the point to where I ended up taking the same math class 3 times. So my mom told me, she was like, "Well, if you have to take this again, that's gonna be on you, and I'm not gonna be able to pay for it. You're gonna have to take care of that with your student loans or however you do that." So that was one piece that kind of was like a coming to Jesus moment type deal. And then my math professor also let me know. She said, "Jonathan," she said, "I don't have time to stay after and help you. However, there's a tutoring center right here, and you can come to the tutoring center whenever. You can ask them for help. They'll sit there and work with you through the problems." So that was when, one, I stopped going to sleep in class. That was when I started paying attention, taking notes, and then going to the tutoring center when I had a free period instead of just hanging out and just hanging around. And then that was when I realized, wow, if I don't understand something, these people are here to help me. And just putting that in place and realizing that there's a system and a process for everything, that really helped me in the future as I started taking other classes in English. And I wouldn't even waste time and try to struggle through it myself. I would just say, well, hey, I'm just going to work on this up in the tutoring center, and then I'm going to ask for help as soon as I need it. So that's what really got me back on that trajectory of, well, a positive trajectory as opposed to, things dwindling down. So I'm grateful for, the tutoring center at Richland College, and, those people there, because tutors are people that I don't know how I viewed them before, but I'm just grateful that, they understand the subject matter well enough to say, "Hey, you get this down. Now, we can start and move forward, and this can apply to all areas of life, right? You need help, ask for it."
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that you were able to become the manager on the basketball team. But when we met during our prep meeting, you said you were able to finally become part of the team as well. How did you earn your spot on the team from just getting a spot as the manager as well as getting back on track academically? How did you put in the work to make all of these things come into focus?
Yeah, so it came to the point to where I had to start doing some things on my own. So one piece was, yes, I was a team manager, but then in that dead time, I would make sure to leverage and utilize the tutoring center. But then the other aspect was, the coach let me know, because he saw me actually before, because I was on the intramural basketball team, or not intramural team, but there was intramural teams, and
Mhm.
I was the second highest scorer there. So I was like, "Coach, come check me out. Come check me out." So that was something that also helped me build rapport with the coach. But then even in addition to that, just realizing where I wanted to go and seeing and knowing that I've met a lot of other guys who were really skilled athletes, but then they always would be academically ineligible. On ESPN, you see the bottom line. It's like this person can't play, or the team made it to a bowl or a championship and they can't play because they're ineligible. So just knowing that I didn't want that stain to be on my name, I just knew I had to do something different. So just like you said, I started talking with the coaches, and then being able to, get a structure in place, blocking out distractions. And that was really what really shifted for me. Not doing what everybody else was doing, but just doing what I needed to do to make sure that I would be successful. So that was the biggest part.
So I mean, so far what I've seen is you've had to refocus and regroup, a good amount throughout high school, throughout college to get yourself where you wanted to be. You also
Mhm.
mentioned that you that grad school wasn't an option, right? It wasn't something that you were looking to do. You were looking to get your degree, get out of school and start making a difference. How did you then pivot once you said, "Okay, grad school isn't for me. I really want to start making a difference now." How did you make that pivot and what did you do once you got out of college?
Yeah, so once I got out of college, Ryan, did anything and everything, man. I started delivering phone books door to door. I started working at retail spots. And I was doing all of these jobs only to realize that yes, I was getting the opportunity to connect with people, but I wasn't getting to connect with people in the way that I really desired to. And then there was a point to where where one of my old bosses I volunteered with him and then he became a boss. But I started to work for this nonprofit. It was called Services of Hope. And this was where I began to be a program manager and where I began to tutor kids, right? So pre-K through fifth grade, I began to tutor kids and did this program for maybe like a year or so and going into the summer. And this exposed me to speaking because I would have to stand up in front of about 200 kids and say, hey, listen up. This is what we're doing. Y'all need to calm down. But it was the speaking and teaching aspect and those attributes that really began to be revealed there. So that was what parlayed me into, like what I was saying before, into wanting to reach out to different colleges and schools and seeing just where I can teach, college students, and by way of teaching them so they didn't make the same mistakes that I made with having to take the same class 3 times and not paying attention like my whole first semester of college. So that was when that change started to happen with incorporating some of the principles from my book that we talked about earlier. And that began to open up the doors for me. Going back to Richland, where it all started, right? This is where I learned how to become not just an effective student, but learn how to become a man with the coaches that we had there. So then I went back to Richland and I was like, hey, I want to speak. What do I need to do? I want to speak. And the lady's like, I don't know, Jonathon. Her name was Christy Neely at the time. She's like, Jonathon, I don't know about how to get you to speak, but there's this men's group that you might be a good person to share with them. And then that's when I got one of my first paid speaking opportunities from a school by way of me teaching the principles from my book just to those men in the classroom. So that was what really opened it all up in terms of the pivot that you were speaking of.
Mm-hmm. So let's dig into the book a little bit. How did you get to the premise of what your book was going to be about?
So I'd have to thank my dad. So my dad, he goes by Dr. Fred Jones. He's the one who told me, he said, John, if you're in 5th grade, then you can help a 3rd grader. If you're a high school student, you can help a middle schooler. So he really helped me develop the premise of the book by these 2 things. The first thing he said was, just like what I was speaking about, whatever you've accomplished or overcame, you can teach somebody else how to navigate through that. And then the other piece that he said is you want to set up every chapter of your book to where you can be paid $9.97 an hour, right? So he operates from the mindset of being able to share and speak on your experience. And that's what I did, right? So I sat down and began just to jot out, things that I've overcame in my life and principles that I've been taught over the years that have served me well and, continue to serve me. So that's really where it started. So him just challenging me on that and him just wanting to set me up for success by way of me having, a product, a book to where wherever I go, it will create an opportunity for me to stand out a little bit.
So since writing your book, becoming a speaker, you've had 2 TED Talks, you've been, speaking at countless universities. How did all of this come to fruition? How did you make all of this happen from the kid that was falling asleep in class to now, right, speaking in front of these big time colleges and universities, promoting your own book, and like I said, doing multiple TED Talks?
Yeah. So Ryan, honestly, it is the way I would put it is betting on myself. So in order for me to write my book and to learn that whole process from my dad, Dr. Fred Jones, I paid him $5,000. Paid him $5,000, and then he taught me the whole process on how to write a book, how to make it a number 1 bestseller. And from there, it didn't stop, right? So after writing the book, then I met an old teammate from my college basketball team, and we met at a Waffle House. We talked, and he was like, I have this speaking coach. Man, you should consider a speaking coach since you have a book. And then he helped get me into that group. What I didn't know at the time was he got a referral fee, so I'm not sure if he really believed that I'd be a good speaker or a good fit, or if he just wanted a little kickback. But either way, I'm not mad at it. I understand. But then I invested with that program, and the gentleman's name was Kendall Fickling. He was my second business coach, and then he showed us how to go out and how to be able to secure speaking opportunities. But it really came from the competitive edge that I had in basketball. And then when that time was up, it had that energy had to go somewhere, right? Just like any object in motion stays in motion, right? So just being able to take that same energy that I had, that same drive, and then just began to plug it into other passionate areas of my life. So that's really what kicked off the journey. So working with my dad, working with Kendall, and then the levels just began to elevate over time. Because lastly, during the pandemic, this is when I really began to get clear on that I really want to work with student athletes, because I realized that I have experience that either some student athletes have faced, will face, or they're not even thinking about it just yet. But by way of me suffering an injury with a shin splint, and not shin splint, with a stress fracture in my shin and having to wear the boot, then I can speak to that, and I can speak to going in a dark place and like depression, all with that instance, right? And then the other side of me winning a junior college national championship from being a walk-on that was the team manager, right? So taking all of those experiences and understanding that everybody has something that they can extract from what they've gone through and what they've been through in life. So that's the way I just desire to do it and continue to do it, just through speaking and just through leveraging podcasting, because our voices are so powerful. But if we just, never share them, or we sit on our stories, then who will know?
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned podcasting, and one of your premises is that all student athletes should have a podcast. And you've said that multiple times. How did you come to that conclusion? And why do you feel that all student athletes should have a podcast?
Yeah, and then just like I told you before, let me put the caveat on it. Like I told you before in our pre-talk, with training, I'll put the asterisk by it. All student athletes should have a podcast with training, with proper training. Okay, and the reason I say that is because I don't know of a better tool that will do what colleges, universities, organizations, teams, coaches, athletic departments say that they have the goal to do in terms of holistically developing a student athlete better than a podcast, right? Because with a podcast, we can talk networking. Like me and you, we connected on LinkedIn, and now we're here. And this is, a podcast. This is media right here. It's going to further their soft skills. So helping them to be succinct in their messages and their ideas and their beliefs, and then being able to share those. So public speaking and being able to brag on yourself subtly, right? So doing those things and critically thinking and coordinating, podcast interview times and furthering relationships, all that comes through the podcast. The branding aspect comes and happens through the development of your voice and your podcast, identifying your target audience. This happens through podcasting. So I don't know of a better tool or a better avenue to prepare a student athlete holistically, or an athlete as a whole, right? Holistically, than podcasts. So that's why I say, every student athlete or every athlete should have a podcast with proper training.
Yeah. And we've seen a lot more athletes get in on that premise. You're seeing a whole bunch of them now, right? You have Up in Smoke with two former, NBA players, right? You've got Micah Parsons with his show every single week. You've got the Kelsey brothers with their show every single week, right? So there's a number of athletes that are now hosting their shows, and you're seeing more and more content come from this. How have you kind of looked at this perspective of athlete driven content coming to the forefront, and what would you say to an athlete that might be hesitant to create their own content?
Mm-hmm. So I personally love it, and I love it for a few different reasons. For so many years, athletes have been the talent, and they've just been the talent, right? They sign a contract for whatever amount, and it seems great but we never consider the factors of what's on the back side of that contract, right? Kevin Durant signs a contract for X millions of dollars to play for said team, but then he's playing on TV. So the organization has a media contract or a streaming deal or licensing or whatever that might be, right? So I love the idea that athletes are creating their own content, and then some who are deeper in the game, then they take it a step further, right? And then they have their own media company that houses their content, right? So I like the evolution of it. What I would say to the athlete who is uncomfortable or hesitant about putting out content or creating their own content, just document your story, right? Just take time and like document your day. If you do TikTok, if you do Instagram, any of that stuff, right? If you have the ability, have a friend record you, or if you also have the ability, have somebody just sit down with you and ask you a couple of questions and you just answer them. And the reason I say that is because one thing we're also seeing rise even more than athlete-driven content or athlete-driven media is authenticity. People want to see the realness. People don't want to see the edited, filtered, crop cut videos. They want to see the real. They want somebody to tell them, like, entrepreneurship is hard, life is hard, the transition is hard, and then show them how they made it out of there. So, that's what I say to the person who's hesitant. Like, don't be hesitant because you have your own story and you can't get that wrong, right? You have your own journey, your own day. You can't mess that up. It's your day. I can't tell you how your day is supposed to operate or how your schedule is supposed to move. So just move forward with that and just know that it's really selfish for us to be shy at times, right? At times, because whatever you might have struggled with, but then you overcame, that can help hundreds of thousands of millions of people. But if you never share it, then some people will never know how to make it through. And then honestly, some people may not make it through. So I encourage you to please don't be shy, but share your story, share where you're at, share your struggle, and definitely share your success. But we want to, celebrate with you and just lift others as you continue to climb yourself.
So one of the things that I can remember early in my career, and even still to this day, is through the jobs and the perseverance that I've kind of put into my own career, I still can't believe that my feet are in some of the rooms and that I'm talking to some of the people that I get a chance to talk to. Right. So that's one of the first things that I can remember is, being at a conference where there were high level executives at, the NBA commissioner sitting 2 seats down from me. You know what I mean? I'm getting the chance to meet some of these very high ranking people and talk to them. For me, that still to this day, like I said, is something that it's a pinch me type moment. When you started speaking, you're having these TED Talks, you're in some of these rooms that, the 12-year-old version of yourself probably can't believe, you're in these rooms. What are some of these thoughts, right? What is, take us inside kind of your mind, your gut, your heart when you step on stage for a TED Talk, or when you're stepping into, a room at the University of Texas or at Vanderbilt or some of these other places that you've talked, and you're speaking to people that you probably never would have thought you would be in the same room with.
Man, for me, it's gratitude because sometimes I'm overwhelmed with like the feeling. I do get the butterflies a little bit because it's just like, one, I never made a Division I. So having the opportunity to be able to speak to Division I athletes, I did make it in a sense. But the biggest thing for me is just I hope that they understand the power of what could really happen if one of them just leverage their voice. So that's the thought that goes on in my head. It's like, oh my goodness, I want to convey something to where they see, know, and understand the value and how to be able to share their story and their message, because they'll reach people that I'll never reach just based on, NIL and based on the influence and impact that they have at the University of Texas, right? I went to University of Texas at Tyler. They had the University of Texas at Austin. So, going into these rooms and getting these opportunities before I stand up, it's really the opportunity for me to say, God, less of me, more of you. And the reason I say that is because these individuals need to hear something from whoever the presenter is, right? And I don't always know exactly what that is, but I'm just leaning, hoping, and praying that something resonates to give them that spark, that nugget, that gem to where they can take it, they can apply it, and then they can make massive impact. So that's just what it's all about for me.
Hmm. So you've, like I said, you've had a chance to speak at a number of universities and meet a number of people. Um, I want a story, right? What give me a story of, maybe it was the first time you spoke, maybe it was your first TED talk, but give me a story that always stick with you. Maybe it was somebody saying, the impact that you made, but give me a story of, you know, one of these speeches that has had a true impact on you, that let you know, I'm doing the right thing. I'm supposed to be here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to speak at, it was an internship expo. It's probably about 400 high school students, juniors, sophomores, and I prepared for this thing, right? Did the PowerPoint, did pretty PowerPoint, all that, went over, did my, went through everything I usually go through for a presentation, did my research, all that good stuff. I had 20 minutes. So I'm getting ready to go up, and the lady says, Jonathan, we're a little bit behind. And I said, okay. She said, I know you had 20 minutes. Can you do it in 10? And I was like, okay, well, I'll try to make it work. Then she said, came back up to me 2 minutes later. She said, Jonathan, we're really running behind. Can you do it in 8? And I said, oh my goodness. Okay. So long story short, I go up and I said, hey guys, I had this long presentation I wanted to give y'all. I was going to give y'all a king size presentation, but now I'm going to give you the little bite size, little fun size, the fun size nugget. So ultimately out of that, what ended up happening was I learned a couple of things, and I'm gonna get to what the person told me at the end. But I learned a couple of things. I learned that being a presenter and being a speaker is so much less about you than you might think, which was really, really, really humbling. But it's so much more about what the audience needs to receive from you before they leave. And then after I'm shaking the kid's hands, I'm talking to him, and a Hispanic gentleman came up to me, and he said, "Wow." He said, "Man, thanks for your presentation." And I said, "Sure, sure, no big deal." And then I ended up giving him one of my books, and he said, "Wow." And I said, "What?" He said, "I've never seen a black author before." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I've never seen it before." And I said, "Oh my goodness." And I said, "Well, what do you want to be? Like, what do you want to do?" He said, "I want to be the president of the United States." And I was like, "Have you ever seen a Hispanic president before?" He said, "No." But that blew my mind just in terms of belief, right?
Hmm.
This is a kid, he's never seen, the black author, and just like I've never seen, we've never seen a Hispanic president, but still he's believing for that and surrounding himself with those type of people and being in that space with the internship expo. So that was one of the things to where it was really humbling. But I was grateful just to be there and grateful just to, be able to share something to encourage him in that way. So that was a pretty neat experience for me.
That's pretty impactful for sure. Now, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and before I let you go, one thing I need is a piece of advice, and then I want you to let the people know that are listening and watching where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you. Maybe they want you to come speak. Maybe they just want to connect. Something, right? Let people know a piece of advice and how they can find you.
For sure, man. Before I do that, man, thanks so much for the opportunity to be on the platform, and thanks for all that you all do with athletes to athletes. So just want to give you all your kudos there. A piece of advice for an athlete. A piece of advice for an athlete. I would say shoot your shot. And shooting your shot for me would mean taking the time to ask that question to an individual, whoever it might be that you desire to get to know more about, or want to learn about their industry. It would be sending that message, sending that DM on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever it might be, But then I want to give you a bonus tip to that. Record it. Whatever they say, do you mind if I just record this really quick? Because I want to make sure that I can be fully present with you, but I make sure I don't miss what you said so I can apply it later, right? So shoot your shot and then get that thing recorded. So that way you can go back and, you can take all the notes you need to take and, do whatever you need to do to get all you can out of the information to where it leads to application instead of just motivation, right? So that would be my tip. The ways that people can connect with me. First, I want to say Beyond the Ball with Jonathon Jones, right? That's my podcast. It's everywhere, YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff. But you can find me, Jonathon Jones Speaks, on all platforms. Jonathon, Jonathan, Jones Speaks. Jonathon Jones Speaks. That's me.
Nice. Well, like I said, man, this is great. I'm glad we had a chance to connect. I'm glad you reached out. And we, finally had a chance to get you on here. Hopefully, we're both in Texas, so hopefully at some point we'll be in the same place, same time. We can meet in person. But man, this is good. This was awesome. I loved all the tips and the nuggets and things that you gave, especially your story of, going from that, that kid falling asleep in the back of the class to the kid in the front of the class to the kid teaching the class, right? So that really showed a lot of perseverance, and I think that's what a lot of people need to hear is it doesn't matter where you start. It just matters where you finish. Right. So, Jonathon, this is a great conversation. Got anything else for us before I let you go?
Man, once again, thanks for all that you all do, man. And if I could be a resource to athletes at all, just please let me know. Please let me know. I appreciate it for sure. Like I said, hopefully we get a chance to meet in person pretty soon. I'm going to let you get on to the rest of your day. So thanks a lot, Jonathon. This was awesome. All right. Thanks, man. Later.